Let's have some fun today, boys. Let's talk about motorcycle advice that I've stopped following. Now, I've given a lot of motorcycle advice throughout the years on my little career here on YouTube, but I'm going to talk to you about some advice that I've kind of stopped following today. And the first one is slow bike fast. You hear this all the time. It's better to ride a slow bike fast than a fast bike slow. And there is some truth to that, but I think there's a lot of nuance that's missing. Slow motorcycles, I think often we're talking about, track day stuff and canyon stuff. People say, oh, like my Ninja 400 and I'm out there slaying the 600s and the 1000s. And yes, on the street, you're always going to be able to outrun people on the big bikes on technical, twisty, tight roads. However, when it comes to racetrack stuff and actually going fast, fast bike fast is the best, no doubt about it. If you're on a racetrack and you have any kind of modicum of skill, getting on a fast bike and going fast is the best feeling. So I've had a lot of experience with this. I've done club racing with little Ninja 400s, I've sprint raced 600s, and I've never raced thousands because I don't have the testicles for it. I will be completely honest. I don't have the stones to race a 1000cc bike. But I've track tested a lot of them, and I have a lot of fun track testing the big bikes. For my skill set, I'm often more comfortable on the kind of 600 to 800cc range on track, but the fast bikes are fantastic. I've got a certain very special, spicy, red little Italian motorcycle in my stable right now that I cannot share with you right now, but I recently took it out on track, and it's hilariously fun. So, slow bike fast, kind of one of those pieces of advice that I'm like, there's a bit of nuance and context required, because slow bikes also don't have the hardware that the big bikes have. It's pretty rare to see a quote-unquote slow bike or little bike have the kind of frame and suspension that makes a big bike feel so damn good at the limit. If you ride a stock Ninja 400 and a stock, Panigale V4, the Panigale V4 is so much better equipped right out of the box to just go fast and have a good time going fast rather than the 400. So that's my spiel on slow bike fast. I think that's one piece of advice that you could maybe not think about so much. All right, the next piece of advice you'll hear a lot is, if you're getting scared on your motorcycle, well, then you're just riding beyond your limits. Also, one of the pieces of advice that I'm like, well, you're missing a little bit of context and nuance here. It depends on how much experience you have. It depends on what you're doing, right? Like, if you're just starting out and you're feeling scared, well, of course you're going to feel scared. You're just started riding a motorcycle. That doesn't mean you're beyond your limits. That just means you're doing something brand freaking new and you're going to feel a little scared. Conversely, if you're riding super hard enduro or, track days or more extreme type of motorcycle riding, feeling that little bit scared means you're at that limit, you're at that comfort zone, and that's where you start to grow. You got to play with that feeling of being a little afraid if you actually want to go meaningfully faster, in a competition environment and racing environment and all that. And even on the street, getting that little bit scared doesn't mean you're riding beyond your limits. It means that you are just identifying situations and you're just riding a motorcycle. You will feel scared riding a motorcycle sometimes. Some of us who ride bikes, like myself, that scared feeling translates into sort of manic laughter, and you're kind of like, yeah, I got away with it, haha, like this is so great, I'm having so much fun. And for other people, they get scared and they say, oh my god, I never want to ride one of those things again, F that, I just want to get off the bike. And that's, I think, how you know if someone is destined to be a lifelong motorcyclist or not. But, being afraid on a bike, that's kind of part and parcel. You're going to be afraid. These things have two wheels. Sometimes they tip over. They don't like to stay upright very often. The next piece of advice, and I've actually doled this one out myself, and it's something I've been thinking through more in 2026, is never ride tired, angry, distracted, emotional, like all these things. Like, don't ever ride when you're like that. And to be honest, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, well, if you were to choose to never ride when you're tired or hungry or distracted or unfocused or, depressed, whatever it is, then you're probably never going to ride a motorcycle, right? Because all of us are dealing with stuff every day, and there's always something that comes up. And what I think the difference is instead of choosing to not ride, just be aware of it, right? For example, in 2024, my first daughter was born, and I was tired all the time because I had a newborn at home and I was sleep deprived. Did I stop riding a motorcycle? No. Did I choose to ride in a way that made sense with how tired I was? Yes, I would go on shorter rides. I would make sure I rode in nice bright light so I would stay awake, and I would try to catch a nap before I would go. That's just a small example of something I did. Then I could have said, no, I'm only going to ride once I'm really well rested and everything's perfect. You can't wait for all the perfect environmental factors. You got to just ride your bike. I think the difference is, instead of saying never ride angry or distracted or emotional, instead say, if you are angry or distracted or emotional, mind yourself on the motorcycle. Stay aware of those feelings and don't let it translate into the bike. If you're angry and you just want to punch a wall or something, don't slam on the throttle, don't slam on the brakes, don't flick the bike over, because bikes, they don't respond well to angry inputs like that. They don't like that. They like smooth, nice inputs. You gotta be nice to the bike. You didn't do anything wrong, it's just a bike. All right, the next piece of advice, if you take nothing else away from this video, this is the one that I want you to really hear. It's, when in doubt, throttle out. I used to believe this advice a little bit, maybe early in my kind of racing and track day shenanigans that I got into. But the more I ride, the more I'm like, dude, the answer very rarely is to add more gas. Very rarely, and maybe like 2% of the time, is adding more throttle going to fix your problems. If your bike is bucking and weaving and things are happening, don't just add more gas and hope to God that you make it out on the other side. Have a plan. I mean, typically, if the bike is misbehaving, you don't want to go faster. You want to kind of slow down a little bit, especially for those of you who ride on street. I talk a lot about track day stuff because that's what I really like and I'm really into it, but I totally recognize that most people are never going to go to a track, are not into track days. They simply ride their motorcycle on the road and enjoy it. And even more than track stuff, on road, adding gas is not the solution. Like, you don't want to be in a situation where you think to yourself, oh, like, I'm just going to give it more throttle and then it'll fix my problems. Definitely not. Definitely not. There's times when the bike needs a second to just kind of like recalibrate and find its way, but that really only happens if you're pushing way too far, and that only happens on track, really. I've never had a situation on road where I get the kind of like proper wobbles and weaves and stuff that a bike does when I'm on a racetrack. I've never had it happen on road because I just don't ride that fast on the road. So I just, the when in doubt, throttle out. Nah, that ain't it. That ain't it. Let's throw that one in the dustbin for 2026, because that is a terrible idea. Now, the next piece of advice is arguably one of the most classic ones of all time. It's ATGATT, and it's an acronym that means all the gear, all the time. Now, why have I stopped following this? I mean, you'll see me riding here and I'm clearly wearing all of my gear. I talked about this on a vlog where I think ATGATT is just a little bit more nuanced and situation dependent than a lot of people make it out to seem. In theory, wearing all of your gear all the time absolutely is what you want to do. Like, in a theoretical world, yes, that is what we're all going to do, but we all have different tolerances to risk, right? And for me, if I'm jumping on a scooter, I'm probably just going to wear a helmet. If I'm riding my Grom around my neighborhood, I'm probably also just going to wear a helmet, probably some gloves too. If I'm riding on the street, I'll probably wear, jacket, gloves, helmet, boots, all the good stuff, right? My airbag vest, which I'm wearing right now, I usually will wear if I'm doing a longer ride or something like that. If I'm just doing a short ride, I may just do a jacket and, call it a day. So I think ATGATT's one of those, it's great theoretical advice. It's good to try to be ATGATT a majority of the time. You should be wearing your gear, but life's short. It's also okay if like one time you don't wear your gear, and you have to be okay with that risk. You have to be okay with the fact that, like, if you go out and you're just wearing your helmet, you could get really bad road rash. It could happen. Again, if you're just riding around your neighborhood with the Grom, even if you go down, it's probably not gonna hurt that much. It's like, oh shit, like it's like you fall off a bicycle or something. So that's the risk you got to be okay with and you got to take if you're gonna take decisions like that. The next piece of advice that you hear a lot online is to buy your first motorcycle used. And this comes from a good place. People, you never know people's financial situations and all that stuff, right? And I think in theory, if you're starting out motorcycling, it's a great idea to buy used, because you don't know if you're going to keep riding a bike. You don't know if it's what you want to do, and you'll save a good bit of money if you buy used. But here's the thing, it doesn't really make sense for everybody. If somebody wants, something that has, you know, peace of mind and a warranty and is going to work completely perfectly, and they have the means to do it, buy a brand new bike by all means. Like, if, you know, $10,000 isn't going to really hurt the bank for you, do it, you know. If that's just an accounting error for you, then by all means do it. I think we have to stop assuming that everybody online is like totally strapped for cash and just broke as hell all the time. I understand quite a few people are, but there's also quite a few people who are not, and it's kind of hard to give people this carte blanche, you know, kind of advice that just says, oh, like, you gotta always buy used and penny pinch and do the most. Like, to some people, like, it's just not that big a deal to spend a couple $1,000s extra to get the peace of mind. And if that's your situation, more power to you. Don't let me tell you to buy a used bike. I personally, I've told you guys, like, I'm not broke. My whole thing is I'm a cheap bastard, which is why I've gotten to the level that I've gotten to. But I would probably still buy used just because I understand the value of money. But if you want to splurge, get yourself something nice, shiny, and new as your first motorcycle, got that peace of mind, by all means, go for it. On the flip side too, if you are going to finance a bike, if you're not going to write a check for it, you know, if you have great credit and you want to do the payments, you know, by all means also, like, it's not a terrible idea. There's some great dealer incentives going on. I think Suzuki for a while there had like 1.99% financing, which is basically like free money, you know. So it's something to think about, right? Buying used isn't always the option. Sometimes you can do something a little bit more sophisticated financially. All right, the next piece of advice you hear a lot, especially from old-time riders, guys who maybe grew up in the 90s and 2000s with motorcycles, will say, man, ABS and traction control, that stuff is not necessary. Just turn all that stuff off on your bike, and you got to be a good rider. Just ride it pure, man. And that's really bad advice. We live in the modern era. ABS and traction control are wonderful things to have on your motorcycle, because for most bikes, you don't even really feel the difference when they're on versus off. And you just get an extra blanket of safety. I look at it this way, like, theoretically, yes, a rider can outbrake ABS, and theoretically, yes, a rider can ride faster without traction control in certain environments or whatever, but really what that stuff is there for is to save you on the bad days. You know, on the days that you're not paying attention, or you make a mistake, or the road is just a little bit more slick than you imagined. It's really nice having ABS, and it's really nice having traction control. And I think the advice to just, you know, quote unquote, turn it all off, or I'm better than the traction control, I don't like TC on my bikes, that's just silly. Especially because if you are the type of rider that doesn't like traction control, doesn't like ABS, you know, it's not very hard to turn all that stuff off anyways. You know, you just run direct lines from the master cylinder to the calipers, and then turn off traction control every time you ride. And then congratulations, you know, for whatever reason, you went back to the Stone Ages with your bike, even though we have tech nowadays that is, it's just genuinely safe and just nicer to use. And the bike is just gonna help keep you safe a little bit. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The next piece of advice is, you know, you got to do the biker wave to everybody, right? Everybody says, oh, you got to do 2 fingers down, man, rubber side down, let them know what's up. You're in the biker club. Honestly, maybe I sound like an asshole, but nowadays I just kind of do the British thing where I just kind of nod. I see too many motorcyclists to always just be flicking a wave all the time, man. And it's like, I get it, it's camaraderie, and I do appreciate the camaraderie, but I also, I like just a friendly little nod, especially if I'm like sitting at a traffic light and I've got the clutch pulled in and I'm ready to go, and some guy rides by and he gives me the wave. I'm just gonna nod at you, man. I'm not gonna wave, and most of the times I'm probably not gonna wave. I'll maybe just give you a little nod and acknowledge you, but I'm just, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe everybody thinks I'm a douche, but for 2026, maybe we stop rider waves, you know? I think it's cutesy. I think it's kind of like, you know, maybe just a quick little acknowledgement and a nod. I'd like to believe that because you're on a motorcycle, we have something in common and we can be friends, but also, like, I have no idea who you are, you know? Like, I don't know. You guys let me know in the comments if you think that's just kind of a douchey thing, but I think the nod that they do over in the UK just makes way more sense. I'm gonna just nod at you. If you see me in Austin, I'm nodding at you, I'm not waving at you. I'm calling it there, that's it. All right, the last piece of advice I want to talk about today is people that say, you gotta ride like everybody's out to kill you. And I understand where this is coming from. It's similar to the whole idea of like, you gotta ride like you're invisible. I actually think that's a better framework than everybody's out to kill you. Because realistically, most people are actually driving trying to not kill you. I've actually talked to a lot of just like regular car drivers. When I mention I'm on, you know, I ride motorcycles a lot, you know, they'll say, oh my gosh, I always get so nervous around motorcycle riders because I don't want to hurt them. I hear that a lot, actually. And so it's not that everybody's trying to kill you. It's that when they spot you, they might do stuff that is kind of like erratic or unpredictable. So again, what you got to do is you got to kind of ride on behalf of other people. I know that's hard to kind of conceptualize, but you got to think for them a little bit, you know? Got to anticipate their moves, and you got to be the one that's like a Jedi Zen master when you're riding out here. Because, you know, somebody who's changing up the way that they drive because they don't want to kill you or they don't see you and you got to be invisible and all this stuff, like, you got to think 3 steps ahead of people, you know? You got to be at the point where somebody does something and you think, I saw that from a mile away. They're about to come over into your lane. None of that stuff should ever be a surprise, because again, if they're driving a car, they're not trying to kill you. They're actually like, oh my God, like, please let me not hit this motorcycle rider and just please be safe. And I hear a lot of people say this where, you know, when they see us like filter between cars or even like a simple like lane change, which to us, you know, we can see that we have enough space to the cars. They can't see that. You know, car drivers hardly ever, you know, pass as close as they could because they're in a car and, you know, the depth perception is a little different. When you're on a bike, you can very clearly see how much distance you have because you're actually out in the open. So I've heard a lot of car drivers say, oh, like, you guys are getting way too close and you're, you know, cutting between traffic. And it's like, no, we can just see it better than you can because we're not in a little bubble. So I don't know, the advice that everybody's out to kill you, also a bit silly. But what do you guys think? Are there any pieces of advice that you heard a lot when you were getting into riding or your first couple years that now you're a little bit more seasoned, you're like, man, I don't really think that really holds up that well? Let me know in the comments down below. I love the conversation around common riding wisdom and that sort of thing. And if you're interested, this Moto Guzzi that I'm on today, this beautiful Verde Lake Nano V7 Sport, is up for grabs on yammynoob.co as a giveaway motorcycle. Become a member, support the show. You can access our Discord server. It's like a bike night that never ends. It is a ton of fun to be on there, and you can get entered to win this bike. I've given away 70 motorcycles in my time on YouTube. Yes, 70 bikes, which is insane to say. But this one is lucky number 71, I suppose. So go ahead and check that out. Thanks so much for checking out today's video. I appreciate it. We'll catch you in the next one. See you later.